Amba Lalita Devi Namastasyai 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 Namo Namaha 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 Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
Thank you so much, Karen. That was so in such a beautiful way to begin the sacred session, truly dropping in that
Thank you.
of the energy of the mother that is always.
Yes, thank you so much, Karen. We appreciate you being here as always. Have a beautiful evening, and we'll see you next week.
Okay, thank you, much love. Bye.
All right, Sadhviji, thank you as always for being with us tonight to do this. It's so wonderful that, as you always share, that our technology can bring us all together across the planet and across India. So we have a question that's already been asked in advance that I'd love to share with you. If we learn from our mistakes, why are we always so afraid to make a mistake? Why?
For most people, the protection of our ego is more important than learning an important lesson. So we can all look at failure, at difficult times, at challenges, at mistakes, and say, oh God, I learned so much. And yet, if we had the choice between succeeding and learning from a failure, or not making a mistake and learning from a mistake, most people would want easily the success rather than the lesson from the failure, or the perfection rather than the lesson from the mistake. And that, I think, is where you get this fear of making mistakes. Is a mistake, yes, it gives us a great lesson, but it also is this huge blow to the ego. And it's a huge blow to that identification within us that says, I am this title, or this career, or this relationship. Because if I identify, let's say I'm a doctor, and I identify, my whole identity is wrapped up in being a doctor. And then I make a mistake and I get, say, sued for malpractice, or I get fired. Well, I've lost not only my career, not only my source of income, but I've lost that whole identity. And that is really terrifying for people. It's much more terrifying than just losing a source of income. It's the sense of, I am that. Now I'm no longer that, which means, who am I? We identify so much in our relationships. I am so-and-so's wife or husband, mother, father, son, daughter. And then when we lose that relationship, whether it's through a separation, a divorce, a death, not only have we lost the beautiful presence of that person in our life, but we've also lost a core aspect of our identity. And that's where we cling and hold on. So much even to relationships that aren't healthy. So many people would rather stay in a relationship that is abusive, physically abusive, emotionally abusive, than face the identity of, I'm alone. If we've identified as that relationship, then the minute that that relationship dissipates, we feel alone. We identify as our physical bodies, right? We identify as beauty or handsomeness. And so things like gray hair or wrinkles or pimples terrify us, not because we've got just some aesthetic preference for blonde hair or brown hair or black hair instead of gray hair, but because somehow that loss of what we've identified as ourselves is so terrifying. So we lose not just youth and the beauty associated with youth, but we lose that identification, that sense of self. And so this circles us back to the question about mistakes. We are afraid to make mistakes because we identify as the doer. And if I identify as the doer and my whole identity is wrapped up in that, then I better be good. Even better, I better be perfect. A mistake means that this identity that I've created as the doer of this particular action or task, that identity becomes shaky through that mistake. If I'm a cook and I identify as a cook, whether I'm a professional career chef or whether I'm just, the best mom cook in the world, right? And the whole family just loves the food, brings people home to eat my food. If I burn something, or I forget to put salt in something, or I put salt twice in something, it's not just a matter of, sabji kharab ho gaya. It's a matter of my whole identity kharab ho gaya. Everything has gotten shaken up because we identify with that. And this is where it's so critical to not identify with these really superficial level experiences, whether it's a job, whether it's an area of excellence, whether it's a relationship, whatever it may be. It's so important not to identify as that. To talk about I cook rather than I am the cook. Or I practice medicine. The grace of the flow of medicine is flowing through me at this moment, rather than I am doctor. In such a way, it's a semantic difference, but it changes so much how we think inside. Because things change. Even if you don't get fired or sued for malpractice, eventually you're going to retire. And we see so many people after retirement, not just bored, but miserable because they no longer have something to identify as. And this is why from the beginning, we have to really remember, this is what I do, but it isn't who I am. And to go back to who you really are in that meditation, in that spiritual practice, so that you don't end up confused and then miserable by a mistake, a failure, loss, a pimple, a wrinkle, whatever it may be that threatens that identity. But we only can withstand that when we are anchored and grounded in an identity that is fuller, deeper, more complete, more true. Because of course, you're not doctor. You were you long before you went to medical school, long before you started practicing. You will be you after you are fired or retired. So we know that isn't who I am. We forget it temporarily. Hence, we are afraid of mistakes. But you're right, mistakes are beautiful learning experiences. And if we can find that beginner's mind, it's a beautiful space to be in.
think so much of it's societal pressure as well, in terms of when we make mistakes, we're thinking more about what other people think about those mistakes, I think, sometimes even than what we feel ourselves. At least that's what happens with me. I'm more worried about what other people think about my mistakes than about my own. So, but that's about being grounded too.
But it's so important because you identify as the persona that you project the world. And so the idea that others will think less of you means there will be a crack
Mm-hmm.
in that persona that I project. We don't project ourselves as soul, right? We project ourselves as beings, as bodies, as roles, as abilities, as all of that, as relationship. And so when people think, because our ego identity is wrapped up in that title, that role, that work, that doing, then it shakes it. So yeah, it's very frequently about what people think. And I'm glad you raised that, because all of these aspects, the career, the title, the physical place, physical experience, well, that's what we then project to the world. And we want affirmation from the world. Yes, yes. Not only are you a doctor, but you're a good doctor. You are a right person. You're brilliant. You're beautiful. You're worthy. We want that so much. That is why we all crave appreciation and acknowledgement so deeply. The simple presence of thank you versus forgetting to say thank you is huge for so many people. It's less so in Indian society. It's interesting. I remember when I first came to India, Pooja Swamiji was saying about how in America, we basically run our societies on thank you and I'm sorry. That those are pretty much the big phrases that we use so much in how we run our relationships. Is we have to always remember to say thank you. And we have to always remember to say I'm sorry. And in India, you'll notice people say thank you very less. And if you do say it, people will say, oh, no, please don't say that. They almost never, very, very infrequently say, I'm sorry. They just come back together in a space of implicit acknowledgement that the moment has passed and that they are together again in love, in friendship, in colleagueship, whatever it may be. So it's an interesting cultural difference. And yet, of course, the core aspect of what will people think of me is certainly just as deeply embedded in Indian society, even more so in many ways than it is in the West. And this takes us back to the same answer, though, which is I need to stop identifying as the doer. I need to stop identifying as that role and to simply be full of gratitude that the action flows through me. At which point it's God's blessings. And when it works, when it's successful, when there are no mistakes, when there are no failures, it's just God's blessing. And when there are mistakes, well, I'm human. I make mistakes. And that self-compassion that we're able to have for ourselves is key. And of course, the awareness that anybody whose opinion of me would be less because of the fact that I'm human? Is that really an opinion that you want to hold so deeply, right? And if it is, if it's someone you really love, you really respect, well, then ask yourself, I mean, if we keep making mistakes, if we keep making the same mistakes, for example, over and over again, and loved ones or respected ones tell us that, or point it out to us, or we just feel it in front of them, the question then becomes, of course, why am I self-sabotaging? But self-sabotage is a very different situation than a very innocent human mistake from which I learn. Either I learn how to improve the next time, or I simply learn how to embrace my humanity with love and compassion. So they're two very different things. But yes, if we do find ourselves in the constant making of the mistakes, then we need to ask ourselves whether we're being passive aggressive on some level. Are we unconsciously not doing what we should be doing? Are we unconsciously sabotaging ourselves? But when it isn't either of those, when it's just a mistake, then we need to be present, to be the first ones to be present, long before anyone around us has an opportunity to either say, that's okay, don't worry, or, oh my God, you stupid being, or anything in between. Long before that, we need to be the first ones to jump up and say, hey, I'm human, kind of, give yourself the little love, little same thing that you would do to someone else who had made a mistake. You kind of, it's okay, don't worry. We need to do it for ourselves. And of course, circling back to the original question, ask ourselves what the lesson is. What can I learn? And it may be something as simple as a trick to make sure that I don't put salt twice in the vegetables, or some way to make sure that whatever the mistake was, I don't do it again. But the lesson may obviously also be deeper. It may be a lesson about self-compassion. It may be a lesson about identification. And these are the lessons that are so critical to learn in life.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. We have a gentleman by the name of Prashant with us who would like to ask you a question.
Pranam, Sadhviji.
Ram, kaise aap?
Yeah, I'm fine, Sadhviji. How are you?
Wonderful.
So my question is regarding the term Nirguna Brahman that is used to refer to God or the ultimate reality, right? So which means that God is above and beyond all attributes. So is it correct to say that those attributes that we typically associate with God, saying that God is merciful, God is forgiving, or God loves me and all that, these all are relevant only to the Saguna Brahman or the personal God that we choose, and not to the Nirguna Brahman, because it's above and beyond all these. And the only quality that it has is to just be infinite and pervade everything in the creation. So is my understanding correct? I would like you to clarify, Sadhviji.
So that's a beautiful question.
Thank
And
you.
it takes us into a beautiful space of thinking about God. Because for me, all of the philosophy is beneficial only if I can implement it in my life. In my life, on a personal level, before I came to India, I was an academic. And I was a great academic. I really excelled. I was a straight A student, loved to get straight A's, loved to be the top of the class. I did academia very well. And when I first came to India, my instinct after I knew that I was meant to be here was, oh, I'm going to read everything I can and learn as much as I possibly can. And I stopped myself. And I thought, if you simply were supposed to learn this from an academic, philosophical viewpoint or standpoint, there was no reason to come to Rishikesh. There was no reason to have this experience of the divine on the banks of Ganga. There are so many fantastic programs in Eastern philosophy, Eastern spirituality being offered in California, in the San Francisco Bay Area where I was living. Why come to India? And I realized that it had to do with the experience of God. And so while over these last 25 years, of course, I've been very eager and excited to learn, I always try to bring it back. And this is what I really aim for in Satsang as well, to, well, what does that mean for us? So yes, sure, let's talk philosophy, but let's talk it in a way that it's not just mental exercise, but that it actually impacts us on the inside. And when we think about that nirgun, right? The gunas are our attributes. Nirgun is without attribute. Aspect of God. What does that mean to me? Well, remember that all-pervasive being, that infinite being, pervades the human heart, right? It pervades the flower opening its petals to the sun. It pervades Mother Ganga flowing. So infinity is not somehow separate from that with attributes. It's just, it doesn't have the attribute itself. So one of the, there's a lot of different metaphors that we use to speak about that which cannot be spoken about. But one way to think about it is if you think about water, for example. Well, water is going to take the form of whatever you put it in. Put it in a tall glass and suddenly the water becomes cylindrical. Put it in a round, flat bowl, the water becomes shallow and flat. Water itself doesn't have a shape. Now, with the nirgun aspect of God, it's not just no shape, it's also none of the attributes. But infinity, remember, infinity is everything. And so when we think about no attribute, it also is the presence of everything. Here's another way to think about it. Let's say that I have a glass jar full of air. Okay? Glass jar, it's sealed, full of air. Now that jar breaks. What do I have? Well, some would say you have nothing. Okay? Nothing. Others would say you have everything. Because where I used to have only a glass jar of air, now that the air in that jar has merged with the air outside the jar. And so now I have everything. That nameless, formless, attributeless presence of the divine that pervades all is all, which means also is. that human heart. Now, the form of that divine who you connect with typically tends to be with form. So whether we connect in the form of Krishna or the form of Shiva or the form of the mother goddess or in other religions, so many different ways. Allah, Christ, Adonai, Om. I mean, so many different ways we connect with the divine. But that is pervaded by the nameless, formless infinity, of course. All that's happened is it's given you a way to connect. It's given you some way to connect. So for example, the electricity, right? The electricity in this light in front of me. Well, electricity doesn't have a form. It exists, pervades everything. There's waves in the air. There's waves in my brain. Every cell with whirling, swirling electrons, right? Energy. Energy pervades everything. But in order to utilize it, in order to connect with it, especially the electrical form of it, we create devices. So we create light bulbs and then we run the electricity through them. We create cameras, we run electricity through them. But that electricity that comes through them isn't different in some core way than the infinite energy. It's just been channeled in a way that I can benefit from it. And so what I would say to you is, in your meditations, see whether you can connect with that nameless, formless, infinite experience. Can you feel that within you? Can you know that you are one with that? That infinite presence of the divine pervades all, meaning pervades you. Can you feel that within you? Can you feel the fact that there is no place you end and God begins? And in your prayers, in your chanting, in your puja, in your personal relationship, have that with whatever way your being, your personality, your psyche best connects with that infinite divine. So whatever name, whatever form, whatever it may be, connect that way. Like we use lamps and we use cameras and we use blenders, toasters, computers. We use so much. Use them. But understand that this lamp is not the sum total of all the electricity in the world or all the energy in the world. It has given me the opportunity to tap into it in the same way that a particular name or form is a way in. It's a doorway to the infinite. Like we have different ghats lining the banks of Ganga, different ways in. So whatever your way in is, that's beautiful. And yes, God loves you. And yes, God is there with you. And God is infinite and formless. It's and, yes, and, not either or. But that is an experience that you will be able to know experientially not philosophically, not intellectually, experientially, through your meditations.
We have another question lined up from a gentleman by the name of Abhishek.
Guruma,
Abhishek, go ahead.
good morning.
Morning.
Guruma, I have a personal question that I am suffering from financial problem and my family is also suffering from debts. So does meditation can help us to erase the problem or do we have to do another thing? And my another question is, do you talk about Hanumanji devotion? So how can we ignite devotion like Hanumanji in us?
Great. So meditation is not instead of action. Meditation is not instead of doing our duty, fulfilling our dharma, moving through the world as instruments, as tools of God's work. Meditation is that which connects us with the presence of the divine. It's that which connects us to that. You can think about it as your roots going into the ground. So when you meditate, the roots of yourself get anchored, get grounded in the truth, in divine presence, such that then you as the tree are growing and giving fruit, giving shade, giving oxygen, giving water, doing all the things that trees do. So it's not roots instead of branches or roots instead of apples. In the same way, it's not meditation instead of action. So no, meditation itself is very unlikely to clear your debts. Now, grace, of course, is always there and miracles happen, of course. And in all of our scriptures, it's been made really clear to us that we are expected to stand up from that meditation cushion, that we are expected to act, to do our duties. And so if you find that you are in debt, if you are having financial problems, absolutely meditate. Because what meditation is going to do is help you anchor and ground yourself in an experience that is not the one who is in debt or the one who doesn't have enough money. It's going to anchor and ground you in an experience of the abundant self, where your cup runneth over, so that you will know, regardless of how much money you have, that you are full, that you are abundant, that you are complete. And it's going to connect you to a place within you that is free from ego, free from fear, free from attachment. And when you are in that place, it's much more likely that the answers to how to come out of debt, how to actually manifest that abundance in your world, will become more apparent. So those are the differences. The meditation is essential because who you are is not someone in debt. Who you are is not someone with financial problems. Who you are is not someone lacking. Who you are is soul, is infinity, is consciousness, is love, the fullness of that. So meditation gets you in touch with But you also have a duty to your family for there to be enough to survive. And that's why you do the work. And you have a duty to society, to the community, to be an active, positive, productive member of that society, of that community. Each of us is meant to give, not just to take, but to give. So meditate and then stand up. Figure out what you need to do to get yourselves out of debt. Let go of the anger, let go of the grudges, let go of the frustration, let go of feelings of it's not fair, feelings of competition, feelings of jealousy, feelings of frustration. Let go of those and just move one foot in front of the other in an intelligent direction, and get guidance if you need it from people who have financial experience. Put one foot in front of the other to get yourself out of this situation so that your external world can better mirror the truth of your internal world. And in the meantime, ask yourself what lessons you're supposed to be learning from this. Because all of these hardships we find ourselves in, as the first question asked, are there to give us lessons. So learn the lessons as well. Then you'll benefit in a very beautiful way. Have a beautiful night, evening, morning, day, wherever you are. It's been so beautiful to come together with you in Satsang, to be able to dive together into our questions. And thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you again on Tuesday for our next satsang. We have meditation on Mondays, and we have Sacred Sunday tomorrow. That's over on Instagram, Sacred Sundays on Instagram. And that's at half an hour later. So that's at 8:30 p.m. in India, 8 a.m. in Los Angeles. And have a beautiful, beautiful next few days. And again, as always, such deep gratitude to our wonderful Seva team, our beloved Sevanandaji for anchoring this, doing the tech, our beautiful Rishikumar Ashish and the whole Rishikumar team of making sure that everything's working, and Karen for bringing us into a space of love and devotion and presence of the Divine Mother today.